There we go. All right. Welcome to, oh, shoot. I don't even know what episode of Overgrow the System to Alex R Dell. I will look that up if you want to throw out your plugs for like Twitter and stuff.
Yeah, sure. You can follow me on Twitter at Alex R Dell, and you can just check out on any podcast app, Own Yourself Show. I do shows every so often when I get time. I try to talk to people and also just do my own shows, and probably not as regularly as I'd like. You can also email me at ownyourselfshow@gmail.com for any reason if you want to come talk to me. And yeah.
Nice. That's better than I can do plugs. I don't even really have a plug except for my Twitter, but I mean like everybody knows that Twitter because that's how I share all this out. So, go figure. Yeah, episode 26, Overgrow the System, and I figure the topic today will be how I am a professional level dumbass, and I've re-injured myself as a person that is already injured. So Alex is here to just,
So
shame.
you re-injured yourself because I know you fell off that ladder. This is a recent thing. Was this building the chicken coop or?
Oh yeah, so see this. This is what you're here for, Alex. You gotta shame me correctly. For a couple weeks ago, I was out longboarding. I fell off and I broke my ankle. There's like a tendon that goes between your foot and that I think it's called your fibula. You know how your shin bone goes down like two bones, one's on like the inside, one's on the outside.
Yep.
It was the outside one. So like the cord that was like connected to it, your tendon that's connected to it, it's just like pulled where it was connected right off, like that little chunk of bone. Apparently, I don't know. It was this whole big deal, but the doctors didn't seem that concerned about it because, like, comparatively, it was the same doctor, so he said compared to the last one, this is not a big deal. But
but stop coming in. You're gonna overrun the healthcare system pretty soon.
I mean, I wondered if he would be mad at me because he lots and lots of hours of solid surgery into each foot, and I go out and I fucking get on a skateboard. But whatever, man. If that's the last time I ever ride a skateboard again in my life, no, I shouldn't defend it, but I want to defend it. That's like, it's tough, man, because like I could kind of longboard again. It was fun. I'd been out that week, but like I was just being cocky, not watching, lost my balance.
Would you hit a rock? Were you going downhill?
No, dude, honestly, flat path just from my house to my cousin's house is just like a couple blocks down the road. I was just going transportation and I was in my own head. I wasn't looking at the road. And when my eyes glued back into my eye line, I'd lost my balance enough that like a retard without thinking about it. Cause I was out of the habit and also, I was being a retard and I wasn't thinking about it. I fucking put my foot down on the wrong side. I got my legs all twisted up and that's how I fucking fucked my ankle all up. It was bad. Dumb decision.
So are you back? You're back in the cast. You're back.
Well,
the crutches life.
Crutches life, yeah. I'm not technically wearing the cast right now because, I can just Velcro strap it on and off when I want. So I took it off recently, but it's something that I have to do now again. I know it's a shame, but I can pee standing still. So that's a victory.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, man. That sucks. I know you're getting mobile and starting to move around again. How long were you off the crutches from the last one?
Oh, I was way back in 2016 when I fell off the roof. So
okay.
I was in a wheelchair till, mid 2017, getting into the crutches, and then 2018 and 19, I was like walking all right, and up until recently, it was pretty good. I could skateboard again, so that's like a really good sign. But I probably shouldn't have been, probably should have like coaxed that little remaining battery life through the decades I had left.
I'm paranoid. See, I'm paranoid where I rarely leave my feet. We'll get in a boat every once in a while. I will drive my truck. I don't really even like driving fast cars. I'll never touch a motorcycle. And it's just because I'm paranoid. I've watched every one of my friends break everything, get run over by trucks, get just destroyed. And that's my livelihood too, is my hands. I keep my hands and my legs. my livelihood. It would be, I
What do
know
you
I'd figure
do?
out a way, but I'm a masonry contractor.
Nice.
So yeah, without these and without my feet and my legs, I'm
Yeah.
shot. There goes
Yeah.
my income.
100%. It's your tool.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, I feel the same way. And it's a really shitty position to be in, to be like a young, able-bodied dude with like an injury. You know what I mean? Because it's not the right. It's just not the right mix-up. That's if that was a Guess Who character, it's a serious curveball. People don't see it coming.
Well, that's no good, man. I hope you're doing better.
Oh, don't
Hope,
feel sorry for me. You're here to shame me for being such an idiot and getting injured again. Because it's summer and I should be out walking around. But we're on crutches and in a cast.
what's summer like in Canada? Because we think Canada here, and we just think the cold northern, just tundra of the north. And I don't
Uh,
even think of summer in Canada as being a thing. What is it? Is it a month long of 70 degrees and slightly less snow, or
well,
what's that
I mean,
like?
first of all, we're going to have to translate your freedom height, Fahrenheit degrees to something that I could understand. 70, hold on. I think 70 is one of the ones that I actually know. I think 70 is like 15 Celsius. And that's my favorite temperature, I think. So I don't think our summers are like decently warm, but we get cold mornings. Um, the North is strange. It's something that people uh, don't really think about. But most of the difference between our summer and your summer is that our days are really long, and like the farther north you get, the more extreme that gets. Like obviously, way up in the territories in Alaska, you get 24-hour sun all summer, which is wild. Um, but here, it's just long days, bright
So
sun.
how long? So I'm in Idaho, which is that's long days for America because your sun is up here before 7 and sometimes as late as almost 11 o'clock at night. Uh,
Idaho's that
it's
one where
dark.
it's really long and it goes between two states and it gets like broad at like the bottom, right?
Yeah, it's the L.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
It
Gotcha.
looks like a gun flipped up.
Yeah. 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 Pointing at BC.
Yeah, it's just a gun pointed at Canada.
Is it on the west or the east of the Rockies?
Uh, Kind of the top of the Rockies, west of the Rockies. Um,
It's kind of like in the Divide area.
got Washington, Oregon, Idaho separating them. Then you got Montana, Wyoming. So it's pretty far north. I'm just dead, uh, you know, 20-hour car ride south of where you are right now. And it's funny because down here we think about Idaho, we're like, people say, oh, it's too cold up there. The cold winters, like, how do you live up there? And then there's a whole nother country like just above. Like when I think like Minnesota, I'm like, oh God, I could never fucking live up there, just cold and shit all year long. And then there's a whole nation above us that we don't even consider.
Yeah. I mean, it's the interesting thing about North America. We get we're so similar. It's like we don't even fucking realize that there's any sort of difference, and all of a sudden it hits us in the face where we're like, oh look, it's weird. It's this whole different country up there. Fuck.
Yeah, it's an arbitrary line too. It's just a straight, just you
Yeah.
guys call yourself Freedom Land. We are kind of still the British Empire. What do you guys consider yourself up there?
I honestly, Canadian politics makes me too angry to just even take into like serious like words, like I'm not smart enough to talk about it because it just makes me frustrated. And then I start saying dumb shit immediately. Do you know what I mean?
Well, all we know is Justin Trudeau. And
Well, that's
when Justin
exactly
Trudeau
what you need
wasn't
to
the
know.
prime minister, I don't ever remember knowing who the prime minister was until conservatives down here started just going off about this guy Trudeau. All
Canada is a funny country,
was
man.
just like Fidel Castro. I'm going with the Fidel Castro conspiracy theory, and that's about as much as I know about it. Like I know what conservatives like picture or characterize him as. I, I mean, I don't. It's so weird being from America and thinking about another country's politics, because it seems like the whole world's just focused on American politics. And
It is really weird. Like we talk about your election up here, like it's our election, but we don't get to vote.
right.
You know, I don't know. Canada's fucked. The whole English loyalists. Plus, you don't throw out the whole fact that like Quebec was French Australia. That was their prison colony. They threw all their fucking jail overflow to Quebec. They're like, "Fuck you, go to the cold," and that's wild. I didn't even know that until I was like 28 or something. I learned
Wait,
that
did you
really
say
late.
Australian?
No, like you know how everybody knows that Australia is like this prison
Oh,
island,
right.
right?
Yeah.
Quebec was that for France.
Oh, I didn't realize that either.
Dude, I didn't know that until quite recently. I was shocked to not have known that. I was like, how is that not something like? That seems like an important fact.
I thought it was just the French just happened to settle up there and down in Louisiana. And so we have our weird French rednecks down there who you can't ever understand anything they're saying. And they play French instruments and all that. But there's like
Cajuns.
a total French speaking state up there, right? That's
Well, yeah, I think I kind of know the history of that. That was part of a Canadian thing where one province that was filled with French people got overtaken by English people, and they all went south to Louisiana or something. I think it was Nova Scotia. Might have been New Brunswick. I don't
so
know.
they did come from Canada.
Yeah, there were a bunch of Frenchies
Oh
from up
man,
north that went down south because they were like no longer welcome. Quebec is wild. Quebec is like, from what I know, I mean, I've never even fucking been to Quebec, and I know, you know, so many Quebecers that I could like total them on one hand, right? So not a lot of personal experience, but from what I'm told about Quebec, it's like all the mafia and just the most Kremlin sort of society you could imagine.
the French mafia.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's
No,
I was working for a carpenter in BC that was from Montreal, and he was like this really old timey French guy that left Quebec because he would always talk about it. He was like he had to pay dues to like the mob, and it was all fucked, and they were all like in tied with the unions, and they're all high up, and it sounds so fucked, but it like completely not surprising, you know. And like 2020 it just fits in perfectly with that.
that's surprising to me because I would have thought that sounds like New York.
Well, yeah, see, there you go. New York's like a good example of that, like the mob
Yeah,
tied into like the government and all that shit.
or Las Vegas. Las Vegas being just the
Yeah,
mob central, which is something I didn't realize too. But they kicked all the mobsters out, sent them west.
and
And
they
that's
head
how we
up in
got this
Las
place we live
Vegas.
in.
Nevada is an interesting part of the world. I've never really been to America, but if I did go to America, I feel like I'd have to see Nevada because it's like it's insane. It's so insane. It's a huge desert where like there's lots and lots of, you know, casinos and strip clubs and crazy.
Nevada is a shithole, man. It is a shithole country. I have to drive through there to get back to where I'm from. I'm from California, so I have to drive through Nevada. And you just drive straight for about 350 miles through the desert. And the only places you can stop are the most backwards redneck little towns. And then there's just Las Vegas, which I've never been there, but I've been through Reno quite a few times, and you want to get out of there as fast as you can. Like it's shady. It might be fun to hang out in a casino for a couple days, but dude, Nevada is high on my list of least favorite U.S. states. That
Fair
I
enough. That's a good list. What else is on that list for me? Because I know literally nothing about America.
well, California is a weird one because it's a beautiful place.
I
It's where
understand it.
you want to live. If you have money, you want to live there. You want to own a house there. It's super nice. It's beautiful. No one can afford to actually live there.
And the
The
people that
laws
do
are
live
so
there ruin it. If it
yeah,
weren't for all the people there, it would be perfect.
yeah, it would. And all the poor people who are there think they're special because they live there and they think they're somehow part of the rich class or something like that because they live in California. So they have the same politics as them, but it's beautiful. So it's hard to say that, yeah, I have animosity with California, but it's just a beautiful place. I haven't really been many places in the East Coast, but as far as people I've met, I would say Louisiana. Not a fan in general of Louisiana. Very shady people from New Orleans. And Florida, not a fan of Florida. Based on the same thing on people I've met from there. I'm not judging all of you Floridians, but
We understand it's
those
not
places, and
like
Boston. I gotta say Boston is, and that's just based on the accent. I just can't take the accent.
I gotta disagree on that one. Boston would be like it definitely my top 5. I mean, Nevada would be up there because it's like so extreme and like crazy. And also, how could I go to America and not see Nevada? You know, it seems like an opportunity missed.
So you like the accent, or is that why you like the Boston accent? Because I like the Boston teams. I like the Boston Bruins.
I just
I
think
like the
Boston's
Boston Red
funny.
Sox.
You know,
I can't stand the fucking accent.
I've never been around people with a Boston accent in like real life, except for maybe like one. You know, and it wouldn't have like I wouldn't have noticed because you know that's not a it's not a real big thing right here. Um, but I think Boston would be crazy. It's one of the really old towns on the East Coast, right?
Yeah, it's like Philadelphia, Boston, New York, or your three big ones out there.
If I mean, I know nothing about it, but if I had to pick, I'd go to Wait, no. What is it? Pennsylvania or is that the state? Which one's the city where Benjamin Franklin's from?
Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Yeah,
There you
Philadelphia,
go.
Pennsylvania.
Philadelphia, then Boston, then I don't know. Nevada maybe.
See, I
Arizona.
would say this about Canada, but I have no idea. The only thing I know is Vancouver because the San Jose Sharks play them, so I know they've got to be somewhere on the West Coast.
I'm a
That's
Canucks fan. Guilty as charged. Are you a
okay.
hockey guy?
Yeah,
Do you like the Blue Jackets in Columbus?
Sharks. I pretty much I
You're
only
you're
really follow the Sharks. I'll follow a little Bruins, mostly just Sharks.
I'm pretty much the same. Although I have really good options where I'm at. Like I grew up in the West Coast, so I'm a Vancouver fan. But then I moved to Alberta, right in between Edmonton and Calgary, so I get to pick between the Oilers and the Flames, and I get to pick who I want to annoy. You know, if there's a bunch of Oilers fans and they're playing the Flames, I can be a Flames fan if I want. You know, and whatever. You know, it's just good hockey. The freaking Stanley Cup lineup this year was looking like it was going to be amazing for Canadian teams, but it didn't go.
It's yeah, that's frustrating because I mean the Sharks were completely shot, but I don't. It's always just a bonus if the Sharks are like going deep into the playoffs. For me, I'm not. It's not something I count on. But yeah, losing hockey, I could live without basketball, but losing hockey and then losing baseball too is like baseball's the one that's always on. So you can always just put it on for some background
Yeah,
background
static.
noise. And XFL. I was just getting into XFL. Now that's gone.
Yeah, how was the whole pandemic in Idaho? I've talked to a couple of people from Idaho. They're in Boise. Is that nearby you?
That's where I am. Yeah,
Yep, Boise. That's apparently a very large city,
for Idaho. Yeah.
and it's filled with liberty anarchist people, sort of Twitter friends. That's awesome.
Yeah, Idaho's a pretty, even in Boise, which is a more liberal area, they really segregate themselves down like right in the city. And if you go anywhere outside of the actual little city of Boise, yeah, it's a very, freedom oriented place. And as far as the pandemic, there was no pandemic here. There's been like 73 people died in the whole state all year. And we did shut down all the small businesses and we shut down all the restaurants, but there was no such thing as like anything resembling a quarantine. There was, people out on the streets just like normal pretty much, except not in the businesses. But what about you? You're in like a smaller area too, right? You're not in one of the big big cities as far as Canada goes.
Well, no, not as far as Canada goes, or as far as like other cities go, but as far as Alberta goes, I mean, Red Deer being between Edmonton and Calgary, it's kind of like a, I mean, I wouldn't call it a big city, but it's definitely like, it's on the road, so people go through the city a lot. But I'm not used to living in Red Deer. This is, I've been away from here for a long time, working up north in little tiny towns out in the woods. So that's where I would much rather be. But for now, I'm back home in Red Deer, and it's weird watching all these other uninjured people adapt to this lifestyle of, you know, that I've been doing for since the wheelchair. It's funny to watch a bunch of people going stir crazy, So
Yeah.
it,
So are you guys locked down? What's your lockdown look like? Because it's interesting that different countries are doing kind of the same thing, but everything has their own little variations.
it varies by state, and in Canada it's varying by province. So like in Alberta, I don't know if anybody got arrested for leaving their house ever. So, never some sort of like martial law, but they definitely are pulling a lot of creepy shit in the background while everybody's distracted and fat and lazy. You know what I mean? Like, I was reading, this podcast has some seriously random topics so far. Have I talked about how you were an awesome champ and you helped me out on my GoFundMe page? Because I definitely meant to mention that. I don't
Oh
want to
no,
sidetrack my whole thought process there. Sorry. But yeah, I wanted to shout you out there because that was so awesome when you did that back in the day. It was
well, no problem, man. Because I know you were injured as a contractor. I'm a contractor, and that's all of our worst fears is taking a crash off a ladder, and you know, just in a split second losing your income.
and then all of a sudden everything starts to shut down around here, and then the quarantine. It was a double whammy. We had the oil field go down because of that. I mean, it's been going down. It's like a slope. Do you have oil field stuff in Idaho?
Not that I know of. Most American oil is, I believe, is shale oil, which is going to be like Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Texas, and then
So
North
on the
Dakota.
other side of the Rockies from you.
Yeah, there's a few big shale fields, and I think that's where most of, other than Alaska or offshore stuff in the Gulf, uh, I think it's mostly Pennsylvania, Ohio, Texas, and the Dakotas. So someone could call me out on that, but no, I don't think there's anything up here.
That's interesting because up here it's like you can't help but see oil rigs in just random farms you're driving by. They're just everywhere. Um, and it was what I was working on. I mean, I was running a grader cleaning the roads for the people to get to them, but it's like a whole spider web of industry, and then
Mhm.
everybody starts losing contracts and everybody starts getting laid off, and now the lockdowns. The lockdowns are so weird. Uh, like right. I just kind of jumped back onto that track, but now I can't fucking remember what that one news article I was trying to remember in the first place was. So I kind of might have totally fucked that up. There's this one thing I was reading about that was happening during this quarantine that was all sorts of fucked up. I might have to pull up my
Yeah,
retweet
go
to
for
see
it.
which.
I mean,
Sorry.
we had a couple people arrested here in Idaho. Like up the street, there was like a lady arrested at the park. Um, she was like kind of provoking the cops, like, but still, like, you can't arrest a lady for being at the park with her kids. I think she went to like try to get arrested to make a scene, which
Yeah.
is fine with me. I think that's necessary to like show people like this is the result of what you're talking about is moms going away in cuffs, and
Yeah.
they're still closed here, and we're supposed to be opening up. We're like restaurants are open. I ate at the steakhouse the other night. Only thing that's not open is like bars and movie theaters, pretty much now.
Just the big crowds.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, like stadiums, sports stadiums. We have like a couple minor league teams that are still shut down.
I this isn't the funny tweet. I did find that funny tweet. That thing. I mean, it wasn't. This one's fucking dark. It was There's a tweet about how China has basically taken over Hong Kong and also invaded India in the last week, while nobody's talking about it in the news. So that was that other dark fucking like.
Invaded India?
Apparently, the fucking
What?
I didn't even know there was a border between China and India, but they're not happy apparently, which is insane to think of. India and China, that's like where, well, 2 billion people live.
Yeah, I was not aware of that.
Me neither. Till that tweet. Sorry, I totally and utterly derailed the coherent thought process there. I liked that we were talking about hockey though. Did you ever play hockey when you were growing up?
No, where I was, there was no real hockey. You had
That was in California, right?
baseball. Yeah, in California, you had baseball, football, basketball, pretty
Yeah,
much your three. I mean, Canada, that's like high school baseball here, right? Or high school football.
yeah. Well, I mean, if that's something that everybody down there does, but it's not like to say every single Canadian you meet will be able to, lace up a pair of hockey skates. But uh, I mean, I used to be able to. So,
Until you got on a skateboard.
well, fuck no. Well, I mean, until I got a roof. Till I got on a roof one day back in the day. Now now I've got bendy ankles, just like somebody that's never been on skates before. I mean, like I can kind of do it, but it's not fun. I don't want to try to learn again because it's not really like learning again. It's more just like enduring, like the learning curve. But it will never even go back up to the same point. So what's the point, right? But longboarding was still fun because, even at 10% capacity, that's still fun shit to do. But skating around on ice, not so much.
I used to skate. I used to go down to the Shark Tank when it was HP Pavilion, and they clear the ice, and then you could skate around down there when I was a kid. So that was the closest I get.
That'd be
Was
super cool on the NHL rig.
skating around down in the Shark Tank, and then we play like street hockey. So we would put on some rollerblades and take a ball and crash into each other with skate pads on.
We
It's
do
not
that
the
in the
same.
summer
It
here
doesn't
too.
doesn't seem like the same thing at all. You just feel kind of really awkward.
Street hockey hurts worse, to be honest with you. I got a whole bunch of rocks to the face playing street hockey as a kid. Just because somebody slaps a puck and they have a piece of rock on the fucking road right there, and rock hits you right in the goddamn face. Lucky I didn't lose an eye. Well, I mean, people didn't lose. I mean, lots of people probably did lose an eye. Now that I think about it, if I'm being honest. But that's way back. Fuck, I'm old now. That was I was born in 1991, so you know that was like early 2000s, late 90s.
Well, that's a lot of playing in the street back then. Or I was born in '88, and
Yeah,
that
we're
was
real
what
close.
we did was go out and just either play in the street, or I would just go play in the forest. I don't know how my parents just let me book out at 10 in the morning and come back at 4, just hanging out in the forest all day. There's mountain lions and all kinds of shit up there, and kind of normal. I don't think I think about it, and I don't think I'll let my daughter do that. But and has the world really changed? I don't know. It's the same world. Is it any different? Do you have kids?
I don't have kids. It's scary to think of letting your daughter do what we did as kids nowadays, because I don't know, is the world any, it must be different now, but there's more people. I mean, that's a fact. But like, is it more fucked up, or is it just that we see all the fucked up shit more, uh, you know it's easy to find. um I don't know, man. I don't have kids. I have a dog. I mean, I came close at one point to having a family going, but that never. That's a not a, happy topic. We're gonna skip over that. Um, you obviously have a daughter. That's awesome. How old is she?
Yeah, I got a 5-year-old, and I tend to think the world's not any more fucked up than it was. I think we're probably more scared than we were, and societal expectations change like based on that. But I don't think,
Yeah,
I'm sure there's still kids running around doing all that stuff.
I hope so. I mean, it's so fucking weird to think about the world we currently live in, because I was having this conversation before with somebody else. I can't remember where or when or who the fuck I was talking to about it, but um, it's like the way a millennial is, like they define it as people that were born before certain, but that's bullshit. Everybody knows that. It's like millennials as kids that are like whizzing around on fucking like hoverboards, that were like, they were the babies that had Facebook accounts made for them, in the crib. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're not us. They're a totally different thing. And they're gonna have a word for that. And I'm pretty sure it's gonna be a millennial. So
Well, they're gonna need a word for the generational gap between like grew up with the internet in its current form and like didn't, because when I remember the internet as just being um, there was no interaction, or there wasn't like, not like there is now. There was AIM was like the closest thing, and that was basically just text messages. But
yeah,
there's got to be some kind of
MSN Messenger, little
yeah, there was that one
emojis
too.
back in the day.
Yeah. So there's got to be some difference between the generation that had all this shit and the generation that didn't. And maybe that's just Gen Z, because really millennials are pretty old with like, I think up to like 35. Like I'm like, I think on the older spectrum of millennials.
Yeah,
I think it's
I
like
might be a millennial, but I might be like just very barely over the edge into
it's like
whatever you want to be.
25 to 35 or something like that right now. I'm not sure.
Either way, like the point of that was like the fucking way it works nowadays is so weird and complicated that it depends on, like, whether you had a computer as a kid or whether you got that like later on as a
Mhm.
an adult buying your own laptop, or whether you had a shitty old desktop back in the day that you were learning how to code. It's like, it's crazy. It's all, anybody could be anywhere on that scale to this day. You don't, like,
Right.
but a lot of us are a lot farther. So it's crazy living in the fucking world we live in these days.
Well, what about the world we're gonna live in?
Yeah,
What are they gonna call the corona babies? There's gonna
dude.
be, how long does this go? Because they're talking about down here, they're talking about having kids go to school in masks and take away any sports activities or like shared activities at all. No communal lunchtime or breaks. And I don't think that's going to fly in most places. I'll be down there at the PTA meetings yelling about it
What's
until
the
it's
point
hot.
of that? What are you going to be teaching people? Like,
Right, because the argument was always like kids have to go to school to get socialized, and now they're just taking that
they need to
away
go
from.
to school to be stored so you
Yeah,
can work. I mean,
that's what
that's
it is.
essentially the argument I keep hearing from so many people. Because I always say, like, fucking good, good. Let everybody experiment with homeschooling. Get everybody out of the goddamn public schools and all that bullshit. But everybody's talking about how it's such a nightmare to have all these kids burdening their parents, and it's just, what the fuck kind of weird logic. I mean, I don't know. I don't have kids, right? You obviously need somebody to take care of your kid, right?
Well, you do, and then I think um, public school, if we're being honest, is a daycare program, or that's what it is for most of the time, and everything that you know. Everything that it's used for, all the propaganda and all that, is kind of auxiliary to that. That's kind of the excuse is, well, we'll take your kid for 7 hours a day or something, and you can go to work, and you can't do much about it when they want to teach them about the 100 genders or whatnot. I guess that's more of a Canadian thing, I'm gonna say, than an Idaho.
That's not all of Canada. I
Okay,
mean, well, hold on a second before I fucking go on and put my word on. I mean, like, I don't know what's going on in Edmonton schools nowadays. Edmonton's pretty fucking far gone. Not gonna lie to you, but like most of that shit that you hear about, like the real, like insane sort of like hard to believe stuff about Trudeau's little weird world he's got over there in the east. It's mostly from Ontario and Quebec, and I don't count that. You know, if it was up to me, I'd put a line up fucking Manitoba and all that shit. Not Canada, but they can keep Canada. I'll call myself something else. You know, I don't know, man. It's fucked to me that somebody in Toronto in like a 30-story, you know, government paid apartment complex gets to vote on whether or not the pipeline goes through Alberta. Like,
Right.
it's fucked. And now we have 300,000 unemployed people here. And if you want to get into Canadian politics, our fucking federal elections are so retarded. Like Alberta votes, you know, in the daytime in Alberta, which means that by the time they start counting our votes, Ontario's already counted. And Ontario has so many people between Ontario and Quebec that the votes decided before Alberta's votes are counted.
Okay.
And it doesn't even matter because Alberta's votes are always not what the East, like the East is always liberal and red, and Alberta's mostly blue and conservative for like the last 50 years or something, like solid.
Oh, so you have red blue the other way. Your Coke is Pepsi and your Pepsi is Coke.
It's
Because
very, very weird how they play
we're
like that
red blue.
mind game on you. They play mind games on you, man, to make it so that you can't translate it.
That's
Fucking,
crazy.
I mean, who knows? That's like a dipshit conspiracy thing to say, but it's fucking really weird how up here a liberal is what to you a leftist is, but realistically a liberal, if you think about it, would be more like a libertarian. I can't talk. I should have a drink of water. Hold on a second.
Well,
Pause.
they're playing with words. I mean, that is,
Yeah, they're like
once words mean nothing,
they're
they.
switching the symbols, the red, the blue, the liberal, the like.
So
Fuck.
do you guys have some kind of electoral college thing? Because there's the same thing here where like the votes start over there on the East Coast, and then by the time they get here, they're calling states. But we have the states, so
Yeah.
you can calculate it out kind of, but it's not as extreme as some nationwide.
I don't know how it goes in America. I don't know if we do it the exact same way you do, but we have an electoral college. We've got like ridings and then, you know, majorities of ridings and all that sort of weird way they turn it into a game. I
Mhm.
I can't wrap my head around American politics. I mean, Canadian politics is weird because we've got like instead of just the red versus blue, we've got red and blue and green and orange and fucking yada yada, like Rhino Party, Marijuana Party, Communist, like fucking you name it. There's somebody you can vote for. Um, but usually it's just conservatives or liberals, right? Just like in America.
Right.
But in America, they're pretty straight up about it. It was weird watching the election between Trump and Hillary because it kind of just made me laugh. It was like a red bar and a blue bar and like a white gap that they were both trying to get to and a little black tick in the middle. And it was like, it just kind of, I was sitting there and I was kind of like laughing, like, we're adults and we think that this is our input on how our lives are run. Like, you know, like it's just a weird thing to look at.
Yeah. Well, I can't speak for there, but here you get that shit really amplified by the corporate angle on it, where it's just like there's so much money to be had by just selling people on either side. It seems like I think that angle is so oversold by or undersold by even libertarians and anarchists don't recognize like
The
this shit's
taint.
like yeah, it's perpetuated by the
Yeah.
corporation. Like it's perpetuated by the media. And those are just giant corporations. And who knows if you took those away, half of the bad shit because everything here is just corporatized to the point of the 4th of July. I mean, the 4th of July is just every single store with their 4th of July ads, and you've got to buy the right napkins and paper towels and plates and this, that, and the other. And it's
and football jerseys and
yeah, in the NFL and all the sports
I
and
get what you mean, the whole like the tribalism. Yeah.
yeah,
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 yeah.
but it's like it's sold to you. It's commercialized.
Yeah. I mean, up until like a couple years ago, I didn't think Canada had as bad a roll of dice in that area as America, because America does seem like really abundantly corporate, you know, gangster controlled. But recently, I don't know, I've been learning some shit about Canada that makes me think that it's equally, if not more corrupt, just because there's more open space for them to get away with shit here, you know?
Mm.
But I don't know. That's totally retarded to. There's no proof. I got no evidence. It's just like a gut feeling, you know? So what's the point of even?
Well, anytime there's power, it's gonna get corrupted. I don't know. You know, how can it's almost just a one-to-one correlation with just you have power, that power is corrupted. I don't, you know, and it's not. I don't
Yeah.
even know if it's debatable.
I mean, there is lots and lots of evidence of it going around in Canada. Like, before Trudeau, there was Chrétien and what was that other guy's name? That French guy, Paul Martin. Paul Martin got thrown out for being corrupt, and then it was Stephen Harper for a long time, and now we got Trudeau. And Trudeau was like investigated in court for his lots and lots of Liberal Party typical. Like, I think the Liberal Party in Canada has been thrown out of government on more than 2 occasions for actually documented corruption, but they somehow keep pulling the whole, you know,
So
rah socialism thing.
who was Rob Ford? Because he sounds like a hero down here. He's like that guy sounds pretty cool. But what was he? Was he the red or the blue over there?
I don't really know. That's a long way from here. That's over in Ontario. But I do know that the one thing that I do know about Rob Ford is that he's famous for getting caught doing, I think it was cocaine off a hooker or something, like something insanely
Yeah,
like exactly what you expect to find a politician doing in like the back room of some sleazy like fucking back massage parlor, finger quotes.
he seemed cool though because he wasn't like hiding it. It seemed like he's just like, yeah, whatever. I'm not leaving.
Well,
Do
it's like Homer Simpson, right? You love him, but he's still Homer Simpson.
right.
I mean, I don't know. That's kind of like Trump, man. Way back in 2016, when it was Hillary versus Trump, uh, I mean, those are two insane millionaires. How do you take a pick between them? So it's like, which one do you think will make it explode faster? And obviously, the answer I figured back in 2016 was Trump. I would have voted Trump back in 2016. I'm one of those people. Guilty. I don't
Oh, I
know.
did.
You did?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely, I did. I got a little caught up in it and thinking that he was more of an outsider than he obviously is now, and it's easy to like look back and see that and be like, oh yeah, I was just totally tricked by that. But
It's a New
um,
York millionaire.
yeah, but in the moment, it it was so exciting. It was like a fucking I don't know. It was like a 6 month sports match of just back
Yeah.
and forth and it God, it seems so real when they
And then he
just know.
won. He fucking won.
Oh yeah, I that night was awesome, and I had actually thought he was gonna win. I bet some money. I bet like I forget what it was, but I think I made at least 1 Bitcoin off it, or no, it was a couple Bitcoin because it was worth a lot less back then. But I did make some money off him winning, and I had him winning uh, all of those Rust Belt states, like the Pennsylvania, and so I
That's
bet
insane.
specifically on those ones. And when they hit, I was losing my mind. I was up till like 3 a.m. watching it because they're doing it. The election went way into the night.
What would 2 Bitcoin be now? That's like
Oh, a
18
lot.
grand, 18 to 20 grand, I think.
Yeah, I lost it. I actually bet on the Falcons that year to beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl. And so at that point, I was on top of the world in the third quarter when they're up.
I
God, they were
remember
up
that. I
28 to 3.
remember that.
I was just like, yes, 4 Bitcoin in my pocket, and it all goes downhill. And then Matt Ryan fumbles, and I just knew it was over. But yeah, it would be worth a little bit.
Yeah, you were betting on that Super Bowl, and depending on whether you won a bunch, you were gonna. Yeah, that was it. That was way back in the day when I was setting up that GoFundMe account. Too bad the fucking Super Bowl went that way, but football. I'm not much
I
of a
put
football
my
fan.
money betting on Super Bowls.
You,
There's nothing new there.
you bet on it. It's not like you're a football fanatic.
Oh no, I definitely would call myself a football fanatic.
Fair deal. Fair deal.
That's my one real getaway from any reality.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We have Canadian football up here, but I don't know. I just don't. I never really saw the whole appeal of watching televised football. There's so much stopping.
Yeah, I went to the same junior high as Jerry Garcia. He was the Canadian football. I think he won the Grey Bowl.
The Grey Cup. Yeah, yeah.
The Grey Cup. Okay, I just call them all bowls.
My grandpa loses his mind when his Saskatchewan Roughriders win the Grey Cup. It's a big thing up here.
That's the only time we'd ever heard of the Grey Cup is when Jerry Garcia went up there and won it, and then came back down, and they would announce it every game he had. Grey Cup winner Jerry Garcia.
It would be weird to think about an American football player coming up and playing football in Canada and like the fucking wind and snow. It must be different.
Yeah,
Although I
well,
don't know.
we get those northern games, Buffalo, and even Pennsylvania and
It's true.
Wisconsin.
And Toronto and Vancouver and most of like the Canadian ones that they have teams in, that's bullshit. It doesn't really count. Like pretty much Edmonton, that's up there. Winnipeg now for NHL, but no other sports really. But we don't have any like basketball teams except for Toronto.
Well, I've wondered about like what is your guys' tax rates like? Because it's a big thing here where athletes will, let's say you go to play in either California or Texas, that's a 10% tax difference because California is at 10%, Texas is at nothing. So I could
Zero?
imagine 0% state income tax. I
Interesting.
believe, there's many states that are. So if it's not Texas, there are many zero income tax states. Um, what is what
Um,
is Canada like when you go up to Toronto?
it's
Do you just get raped on the taxes?
I don't travel to Toronto, but if I did, I would get raped on taxes. Yeah, in Alberta, I think we have the lowest in the country. It's 5% tax just on like goods and services, so like things you buy. Um, I mean, I couldn't break down like your you know end of the year government taxes, uh, but it's just 5% here. I think it's 7 in Saskatchewan, and then it's like fucking 14 in Ontario and
Yeah.
BC and Quebec and like all those other little. I don't know what it is up in the Yukon. I lived up there, but I can't remember what it was. That was a while ago. Yeah, it's different up here, but I like Alberta. Alberta is a good place to be. I mean, BC's all right, but it's just like California. It would be perfect if all the people weren't there. You know what I mean? Yeah.
So what have you done? You moved. You've got like a farm going now.
Me now, I don't have a farm going. I'm just helping a bunch of my friends and relatives with a bunch of garden beds, and they contract
Okay.
me out to grow and help them grow their spring seeds and get their stuff going. And for the most part, it's to do with my one aunt. She's a botanist, and she's into all these like permaculture projects, and she's the reason I got those chickens going and all that stuff, because like joint projects, and then it's easier to do and all that. Yeah, it's not really like I could claim I'm doing anything on anything I own. Like I am basically you know, a vagabond at this freaking point. I lost my job, came back, crash landed at home, and don't know where I'm headed now. This is definitely not like a permanent thing, so I'm not like putting down roots. You know what I mean?
Well, you're picking up skills on the farming. I just started a garden. It's the dumbest little garden, and it's hard to keep those fuckers alive. it's mostly my wife working on it, but
It is a surprising amount of knowledge those old timey farmers have. Um, yeah, I mean, it was. I'm kind of I'm a, I'm a weird story because when I dropped out of college, I just went straight into the trades, but I never like stuck to one trade. I kind of just followed all of these trades of like acquiring skills that I wanted to learn, just in my day to day. Like that's how I ended up learning masonry and all that stuff. Um, just because that's what interested me, and you know, I was doing contracts, and I'd move on, get other contracts. It was freaking sweet, actually. How did you get into masonry?
I started out of pretty much out of high school. I started doing commercial glass. So I did high rises, and then I really didn't like commercial work. And 2008 came around and wrecked everyone. And then
Yup.
when I came back and things started picking up, I had a family friend who owned a masonry business and hired me to mix mud for a summer. And somehow I just stuck and unfortunately chose the most backbreaking of all the trades and
Oh,
got stuck doing that for 10 years. And
guaranteed. I mean, I don't know. It's probably the most backbreaking, but what, like, there's got to be some dude out there that has to take like a wheelbarrow full of like, you know, like liquid cow shit, 20 times an hour. Like, there's got to be work out there. But masonry that's the hardest job I ever had for fucking sure.
yeah, it's that now it's easier now because now I have guys working for me and I don't have to do nearly as much work as I did before. But that took a lot of backbreaking to build. Um, but I would say, I mean, trade work is a lot of guys' best shot at making something, or moving forward. And I don't know how it is in Canada, but it's not a lot of kids getting into it
It's the
right
same
now.
here.
I feel like I was one of the last generations to get into it because I was one of the younger guys on jobs back when I was 19, and then I was in my late 20s. I was still one of the younger guys on jobs. It's
Yeah.
yeah,
I couldn't agree more. Exact same thing. Same story, like word for word for me. I was always like that 19-year-old that was on the job sites with like 45 and 30-year-olds. Just that one freaky young person. Because there's like none of it's weird. I don't know. I don't know what the fuck everybody's doing. It's like everybody's going to university to become a banker. We don't need this many administrators in the world, but everybody wants to be an administrator.
yeah.
I don't know. We circle back to we live in these crazy fucking weird COVID times, man. I don't know what it's going to be like in 4 months from now.
It will probably be very different depending on where you live
That's a good
because
point.
the trajectory we're on where I live, we could be back to complete normal almost. I will say
Unless
that
China goes to war with India and start lobbing fucking nukes and shit. Like, who knows what's about to happen?
right, hopefully there's no war in our future. But
Food
one
shortages.
thing here is the corporations, like the big national corporations, aren't changing anything. And we're supposed to be opening up. We're supposed to be like pretty much back to normal here. And the big corporations are still, completely pretending like we're in New York or something. And that's really weird because the smaller businesses are treating it like, well, we're back to normal and we're just all open. But these big national chains are still wanting you to stand 6 feet apart from each other. And
Because they know that if they keep everybody smothered, they'll survive everybody else.
yeah, yeah, I think so.
I am so disgusted looking at everybody funneling into one Walmart and Costco while they shut the farmers market.
Yeah.
Like, what the actual fuck are you doing? I understand that the farmers market's a little bit hands-on, intuitive, but Walmart, really? How
No,
is that safer?
it's just the same. I mean, you're going through the produce and looking for the best ones, putting them back. Everyone's touching them.
Well, it's because if they'd shut down everything, man, people would be starving, and then fucking fuck. I literally think people would have started starving if they didn't leave the WalMarts open. Like, how is that the world we live in? But it's definitely true, right? At least where we live. I mean, where I live for sure. Maybe not where you live because there's probably more than just like Walmart. But like up here, there's like one Walmart per town. If you lose your Walmart, you're fucked.
Really? So where I am, I think a lot of people here would be fine because the hunting is so good around here. You can drive 20 minutes and take an elk or something. I think people would be okay and there's so many farms out here that we've
Yeah,
had a lot of like direct farm to store. So even the bigger chains here, we haven't had any of the meat shortages other places had because they're just sourcing it locally because there's so much ranching out here. There's so much agriculture, and that's been kind of. I think people in my area would probably do okay.
I'm not even sure I buy that fucking all those meat shortages, man, because that's their slant on the breakdown. And if you look at it, where's the bottleneck in that system? It's not like that we have a shortage of cows and fields. We've got more than enough cows and fields. The bottleneck is at the processing, right?
Yeah,
It's getting the cows into the trucks, shipping them on a fucking highway hours and hours to a one slaughterhouse that the government regulates or whatever the fuck, because they're getting dollars in their pockets, which I 100% believe is the only reason that there's monopolies like this and these industries are this fucked to this day. But
I mean,
anyway,
I agree that I think it's in the benefit of the big farms and the big ranches to cut off that supply chain and just completely kill all the smaller ranchers. Because if you can cut off that packing plant, what does the fucking rancher do? He just has to kill his animals and take a loss. How many of those can survive? And then you have, I would imagine, I don't know this off the top of my head, but I bet if you look into it, there's a relationship between those meat packing plants and the bigger corporations. Same with produce or foods. Eventually it just consolidates.
yeah.
And I think it's just every single industry is just looking at this as a great opportunity to cut out any small anything and just swoop in a year and take it all over.
I mean, there's an interesting story that I heard the story about Toyota, where they supported all of these increasingly jacked up environmental regulations and like safety regulations, and how if you're putting out a new car, it has to meet X and X and X, and like an infinitely lengthening page of like all of these check marks they got to check, because Toyota knows that they'll make it, but anybody that wants to compete with them can't afford it, right? So they're like constantly going to support all this. I mean, that's proof, right? That goes to show exactly what you're saying. That's we know this happens. We see it, right?
McDonald's supports a $15 minimum wage,
Yeah,
and they know they can't pay a $15 minimum wage. They'll probably cut everyone out, automate, and your
exactly.
average restaurant is completely fucked. So yeah, we know this relationship exists. Like, why would it not in this time when everything's amplified? Why would it not be amplified now? Why would they not be using this now?
What how do you feel about the incoming automation of labor? I had this really strange argument in I got into this like unemployment school class where they were teaching me to work in like the supply chain, and they were talking about how logistics and all this stuff works. And there was this part where they're talking about artificial intelligence, and the like the EI presenter up in front of the classroom was doing their government worker best to put a brave face on it, and like, oh, the robots aren't coming to take your jobs, they're just they're the new workforce and you will be retrained to work them. And like,
Mhm.
just exactly like the funniest like schmear of government bullshit you could ever be fed. And I piped my hand up and was like, yeah, but you know, there used to be a store with 10 people working tills, and those 10 people made, X amount of wages that they used to take home at the end of the year and pay fucking X amount of taxes on, and X amount of jobs are now not going to exist. So how the fuck do you think this is going to keep continuing? We're obviously about to see shit about to hit the fan. Like,
Yeah,
it's funny.
I kind of agree, because most of the libertarians will tell you that there's nothing wrong with automation. It's just like the Industrial Revolution. You wouldn't have,
I
you
agree
could
with
have,
that. I
well,
agree with that.
I do, but because you could have 10 guys digging a hole, or you could have a tractor do it. We don't have 10 guys digging a hole. But I would say that this is not like the Industrial Revolution, because you had a lot more freedom to innovate back then. And where is that same freedom now to simply innovate an entire industry? I mean, in the Industrial Revolution, you had new industries just popping up right and left, and fucking like things as revolutionary as cars like being created, and fucking airplanes, and like just things that you never would have thought of. And where is that now? So now when you take away those jobs, I don't think it's as simple as this new industry just springs up, because those companies now have just this vice grip using the government on any new innovation. So I don't see it as being the same thing as at all, because back then, I don't believe that those companies had nearly as much power to just clamp down and knock out all the little guys as they do now. And so it would be seems like it would be in their best interest now to automate all those people, do some kind of UBI thing, and just, because back then you didn't even have the infrastructure to have a UBI, or a universal basic income, a government check every month.
Well, you
Seems
didn't
more
have
likely
block.
that that's what we get now, and you just have this slave class of fucking people who cannot work for themselves, just completely reliant on the government, who's in bed with these corporations taking away their jobs. So I don't necessarily agree with libertarians when they say, there's automation is nothing to be feared. I don't really buy into that at all.
Nowadays that we got blockchain, we can do a heck of a lot of things that we used to not be able to just a short number of years ago, right? Like,
Well, that's true. There could be a better gray market now, or a better black market, um, and that probably will exist. But it, I don't think it'll ever be enough to overthrow a system, but it will be enough to like free an individual from all that bullshit.
yeah, no, it's more of freeing yourself as much as you can in
Yeah.
the easiest way, in in the most accessible way, I guess you would say. But I don't know. I'm firmly for that whole overgrow the system. Obviously, we're on Overgrow the System podcast, but um, it's not meant in like doing this will overtake the entire system. It'll just get you out of it.
Yeah.
You're done. Be gone. But who knows, man? Like you were saying, they're working their best to get you part of their game. It's a trap, and it's an obvious trap. Like, you can talk to 8-year-old kids and be like, "Do you feel like you have some sort of trap around you?" And you're like, "Yeah, probably." Fuck, I don't know, man. There's a lot of people out there that feel the same way, and they're all bashing their heads against the same wall. I feel like eventually it's gonna fall over.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. I don't think it matters as much, and I've been going down the road more of just personal responsibility of trying to fucking, either if I want out, I want out, because I think people have a right to be ruled. If you want to be a slave, you have a right to be a slave. And the only place where that infringes on me is where you bring that into my life. So I'm going to try to figure out ways to protect myself from that. But I'm not necessarily here to overthrow the system and tell your average person, hey, you can't be ruled by some asshole in a Capitol building. Like, if you want that, that's fine, and I'm going to try to find ways to separate myself from that. But I just think that's way more important than trying to overthrow some massive system that is probably not going to happen.
Well, and it's also such a spider web, you know? Like you're taking a punch at a hay bale. The back of it is never gonna take any effect.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you leave a little dent maybe, but I don't know. That's pessimistic. And like 3 seconds ago, I was talking optimistic. So I don't know where I fall in the whole politics thing. I mean, obviously that's a lie because I do know where I fall is I want to get the fuck out. I want to be somewhere where they can't find me. But they put money into tracking you down.
I think some amount of that is to scare you into line to, how much resources, unless you really become the target of that system, I think
Well,
there's plenty of room to slide under. At least here there is. In America, there's still a lot of room, but we're not on. I bought a AR-15 from a guy in a parking lot fucking completely legally. That's there's still a lot of room in America.
hold up, hold up,
Um,
hold up, hold up. For how much though? That's the key point. Because in Canada, an AR-15's like 3 grand. I
oh,
think
well, it depends on what you're buying, I guess. I have a pretty nice one for $900. But then again, there's a functioning market. You can log on a
exactly.
website and go buy it without ever getting on a list or anything. So
I'm pretty sure up here ours are not any better. They're just like ridiculously expensive.
that sounds pretty expensive.
Like I mean it might not be 3 grand. I don't know. I've never filed the paperwork to buy an AR-15 up here. Um,
Well, that's
I
the thing is if you do have to file all that paperwork and you do have to do this and the other, there is a control network,
uh
to come get you. But
yeah.
in America, in certain states, depending on where you are, there's still, you know, you can slip it. Like in Idaho, there's a lot of laws that are just not enforceable because there's not a giant labor board in Idaho that just goes around tracking people and doing stings to catch them working without licenses and this, that, and the other. That just doesn't exist. And I still have all my legal paperwork that I need for contracting, but a lot of guys don't. And there's no real mechanism to go get them. So it's like, those guys are existing in that gray area and they'll try to scare you into following all the rules. And probably a good idea to toe that line. But um,
Oh, you could go above it, right? That's just the minimum code. It's just the minimum, right?
yeah, well, there's code, but then there's also their, you know, regulations and permits about every single thing and labor
Yeah.
laws and this, that, and the other. And once you do involve yourself completely in that system, like, yeah, then there is a network to come get you if they want to. But I still think there's a lot of room to remove yourself from the system and probably a lot of room to not get completely picked back into it.
I feel like in America you got a little bit of a better chance. Like, have you heard of? I mean, you've obviously heard of. They're called sovereign citizens. It's like they
Yeah.
renounce. Up here, I think up here that's like a bit dumber. You know, like that's always in like the gray areas, but some of it, I don't know. Like I don't know anything about it, and maybe they have good points. I'm certainly not going to try, my luck with it anytime
Well,
soon. I want the easy path, not the exceptionally unlikely to succeed path.
the problem with those guys is they go head on at the system where they get
Exactly. Yeah.
pulled over and they start yelling at the cop, like, I know my rights. I'm a sovereign citizen. And you're like, you could probably have just called him sir and been along your way
Yeah.
and nobody would be any the wiser.
Tug your hair to the cop and
Right. I've
go
got
on.
the American flag sticker on the back of my truck, and it's not to fucking be all patriotic. It's to just blend in a little and move about my business.
Blend. Nice. I have absolutely no stickers on my truck for that reason. Just
Well, there you go.
yeah, keep her stock. Well, fuck. It's been so long since I drove my truck. I miss driving, man. Yeah. I gotta get a. It's crazy. It's like, what step to begin on? When you lose your job and then your vehicle and then the place you live, which one do you replace? I mean, I got to go with the vehicle, right? To get the job. So that's the plan. I mean, that's what I've been working on. I'm close. There's this road crew that I was gonna be working on, hopefully coming up like the end of this month. Um, but it's not looking likely with this stupid foot. I mean, I could still kind of operate a machine, so I might still go do that if they'll take me. Um,
Those are the steps you want to take. You want to be, you want to have something stable first, and then from there you open your options. And I try to put emphasis on getting independent with that stable income as fast as you can, because then you open more options. But it's
yeah,
all just about opening options and then not locking yourself down in any one thing. But the stability of having something first, like a steady income, and then not tying yourself to that, because too many people go buy a brand new car when they get that steady income, and then 5
guilty.
years later, well, 5 years later you have to put your kid in the public school to make your car payment to go back to work. you know it's about options, in my opinion.
That strikes pretty close to home. You're talking to a dude that got laid off literally like 3 months after I financed a new truck to get to work.
I did the same thing when I was 19.
Fuck.
Exact same thing.
But such is life. Um, Back to the topic of like being like I was thinking the Americans have like an easier chance of going sovereign citizen than Canadians. I don't know what it's like down there for like the police looking at your land, but up here I know if you just squirrel off into the bush somewhere, they'll like thermal scan out your campfire and come track you down and shit. Like, I
No,
mean, I wish I was kidding. Um,
it depends on what they're after you for. So for as free as America is, once you get that target on you from the system, in a lot of ways you're fucked. I'm from Idaho. Are you familiar with the Ruby Ridge incident?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. So that happened
Well,
not too
I
far from
think
here.
I confuse it with Waco.
So Ruby Ridge happened, I think, a bit before Waco, when a basically a guy from Idaho moved up here. He went, lived out in the woods. He went to a kind of a party or a meeting with this right wing organization, whatever.
Birch
Um,
Society, right?
I'm not sure exactly what it was, but there was an undercover, um, or an informant at that meeting who bullied him into sawing off a shotgun. He did it and got $500 or something. Next thing he knows, ATF with sniper rifles are shooting his wife, shooting his dog, pinning him down in his house, shot his son, and finally dragged him out of there. So the point is, yeah, you can move off into the wilderness, but you still have to hope that you don't get that system targeting you. As far as like your average interaction with cops, it really depends like what you bring to that situation. I feel like if you're going to be one of those guys that just yells about your rights, like you're not approaching this very intelligently. And then yeah, they might get you with the thermal, they might send the drone up and try to fucking find you wherever you are. But
In the
they're
middle of the Yukon, just
be smart, like be smart.
um, that's interesting. I mean, fuck, I had a thought, but I totally lost it there. Sorry, I got lost thinking about the Yukon because I actually knew a guy that had he had like this. He got grandfathered in. He had a little cabin up there. It was insane. He had it like insulated with garbage bags in the walls and fucking. He was like a legitimately mentally ill person living in the woods, but he was cool. He made like knives. You just like take a piece of metal in a file and sit there for like a month and turn it into a knife. Like he was a crazy person, but he was like that good kind of crazy people. I mean, that's the kind of crazy people I aspire to be.
Living in the woods, making knives, sawing off shotguns.
No. Just like the kind of crazy person where like people that meet you can just obviously they tell you're crazy, but they can tell that you're crazy in like a harmless and friendly way that they like and not, kind of pull back at in fear.
Yeah,
Because there's two different kinds of crazy.
there's a lot of that out here. There's a lot of people who just simply want to be left alone. And, there's nothing wrong with that. And it's, I mean, you can buy a house up in the woods out here and you could be an hour away from town and you might as well be in the middle of the Yukon. It gets so remote, and which I think would be nice. You don't have to be completely out in the middle of nowhere, but you can still have your peace and quiet.
I definitely like having the internet. The internet's cool. It's people that want to go away from the whole modern tech and all that. I always wonder because I don't want to go away from any sort of modern tech. I want to like have both, because the only problem nowadays is we only have the one. We glob onto all this new shit and we completely throw out all the old shit. It's like we have amnesia, you know. You try to get anybody to do something the way they used to do it, 200 years ago, and there's probably like one person on earth with that skill left, if that, right? But now, we're all really good at computers, but nobody could rebuild the pyramids or whatever, right? Pick your thing.
Right. Well, even certain trades are dying. Masonry is a dying trade.
100%. Like imagine trying to rebuild Notre Dame. Notre Dame was what I was trying to think of there for like that example, but I didn't want to say it because it sounded like pretentious, because like I kind of want to try to build something like Notre Dame, but I could never do anything like that.
I have all the modern tools, and I'm one of the probably top 10 masons in my state. I mean, I don't want to, I'm not trying to ring my bell, but like I'm really, really fucking good, and I couldn't do that. I cannot do the
it's
work
not the same anymore. Like
it's not. I could not do it with all the modern tools.
Exactly.
I have no idea how they're artists.
It's insane, and they did it with their hands.
Yeah, that's essentially dead. And to get enough guys who were that good to be able to do it would be impossible.
Man, I've often thought about going back and seeing if I could get a job on a masonry crew somewhere where I don't have to use my feet, because I loved laying bricks. It was really fun. It's permanent Lego, and especially when you're like trying to fit around windows and like little tricksy bits where you got to make things fit, and like that cultured stone where it's not all the same size.
Oh, you can still do that if you can get on a wall.
Tetris.
You don't have to move around much.
I don't know.
Sit there and have a couple guys bringing you stuff.
I mean, that'd be sweet, but WCB thought I'd be better off working in the oil patch, which abruptly shut down. I mean, it was my own fault. I fell off the roof. Right?
Happens to anyone, man.
Yeah.
It can happen to anyone.
Fucking such is life. But I got the good gardening going on now. I wouldn't have had that. I was shit gardener before I fell off the roof. I'm not gonna lie to you. I spent a lot of time just puttering around on my hands and knees, putting little plants in dirt, and that's kind of how I learned all this shit. Growing stuff inside in the winter because it's Canada, it's cold, and also medical marijuana, right? And then they made it legal, so now I'm trying to like, it's a fucking long story, man. I'm trying to contract out selling people, me teaching them how to set up their medical grows. But like, so far it's been fairly unsuccessful because like, it's just a side gig. I have to put much more focus into that. Otherwise, they just kind of all spiral off into these directions and I can't keep track of them.
Well, that's a specialized knowledge that you can definitely use. I have a little knowledge in my past of that, and that's something that people are either going to spend 2 or 3 crops learning how to do, or they're
Exactly.
going to get somebody in there who's already wrecked 2 or 3 crops.
Yeah.
And you're
I can
stuck.
just boost you that little bit of that learning curve, and then
That's a lot of money. That's
it
a lot of
is.
money they could lose. So if you
It,
can market yourself well, and you have the knowledge, it's all about being able to market that knowledge in a confident.
my goal this summer is to grow a crop of seeds so that I can sell seeds. Cause like up here, you know, pot is cheap, but seeds are hard to get. So,
Hmm.
and everybody's allowed to grow plants. It just kind of seems like a really, really, really obvious area for me to aim at.
Hmm.
I don't really see very many downsides to it, except for the fact that everything's like, you know, there's 2 or 3 companies with a monopoly on it, and I'm not them. And I don't know what paperwork to file or fucking if it's even illegal or what. I don't, you know, I could pay attention, but what's the point? There'd just be something I missed, and then they trip me up on it because it's a game.
Yeah, that's a gray area, man. That's a gray area where a lot of people can make a lot of money. You might not ever get $1 million and a giant business out of it, but there's a lot of money to be made filling the holes that are needed in even a small area. You don't have to ever be the Walmart, and that's what I see so many millennials, especially, get so caught up in this thing like, well, I'm never going to compete with X. And it's like, you don't necessarily have to compete with X. I never tried to compete with the big masonry contractors. And
Yeah.
here we are. A lot of them went out of business with this entire lockdown thing. And here I am picking up a lot of their work. So
You're doing good still?
I'm crushing, yeah, because so many guys went out of business here that, I'm just simply picking up their work, and I always stayed small and never really tried to have a 50 guy crew or something like that. I never tried to have a big business, and I was more focused on, filling a niche that wasn't being filled, which was straight to homeowner residential remodel mostly. And if you can find that niche, you don't have to worry about growing the business and all the headaches that comes with it. You can do the same in just about any area. And then you're not completely involved in the system. You're not, reliant on the housing market as much as you would be. You're not reliant on all of these things.
The price of oil.
The price of oil. Yeah, you're not, completely in debt trying to fund a bigger and bigger operation. Like, there's plenty of room for people to make good livings, um, filling niches that aren't being filled by those bigger companies.
It's that goes back to, I don't know what it looks like in 4 months from now, right? Like it's a brave new world out there, man. It's crazy.
Yeah.
1984 kind of stuff.
Hey, I gotta log off. I gotta go get my daughter in bed.
Right. Well,
It's time, but I appreciate you having me on and talking, man.
hey, I mean, 1984 is a good note to end her on, and
Let's hope it's not that bad, dude.
I
We'll
I don't
see what
know. I don't know, man. If it isn't that bad, it's just because they haven't spread it, you know? It's that bad in little clusters, but like there's
happens.
obviously areas they're not touching. But who knows? Anyway, you
Yeah.
have a good and thank you for your time. It was awesome having you on, man.
No problem. I appreciate you setting this up.
For sure. We'll have to do another one and talk about masonry and all that stuff.
Sounds good. Get a hold of me anytime.
All right. Have a good night.
You too.